Welcome to Homicide Life on the Set, a podcast about the Emmy Award-winning television show Homicide Life on the Street, with myself, Chris Carr, and Susan Ingram. On today's podcast, we're joined by Isabella Hofmann, who played Lieutenant, then Captain, and then Detective Megan Russert. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Isabella Hoffmann's our guest today. Susan, how are you doing? You all right?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy to have Isabella on, and I think people will really enjoy this episode.
Yeah, indeed. It was great to have her on, and she was sort of very open and honest about her experiences on the show, and talked a little bit about, obviously, the female perspective of being on the show, because Homicide was mainly quite a male-dominated environment, so that was a very interesting perspective on that. So I'm glad we managed to chat with her, and her being one of the original women on the show. So it's fantastic to get her on.
Yeah, and I love the contrast between Reed coming in as a newbie on the show and also as a newbie as a character, and her coming in as a new person into the ensemble, but being a known character, and her perspectives on how that worked for her. In real life, how that energy worked for her too, in a different way than it did for Reed, which was interesting.
Yes, indeed. Well, without further ado, we'll go into the episode, and then we will catch you on the other side. Isabella, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you on. We have, Captain Russert herself.
Oh, I am so excited to be here. I really am. I'm so happy that you're doing this. I have loved doing Homicide, and I love the show, and I love that you're bringing this back, and I love that you're talking to all the people. And it's been a really interesting listening to the few podcasts that I was able to hear. I'm so happy that we're doing this, and I'm really glad to be here. Thanks.
Well, thank you. Thanks for coming on with us, because you and Melissa, obviously, women detectives, the first ones on the show, at a time when that was not, a normal thing. And, I think today it isn't even a normal thing 30 years later. So we really wanted to talk to you.
I'm glad. Yeah, I was very flattered that you asked me to come on.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Absolutely. It's great to see you. Just to back up a little bit on that, as somebody who was one of the only technical people on the set, and of course there were other women in the crew, obviously, set dressers, hair and makeup, and all that. But I always felt like there was some kind of helpful connection with me being on the set with you, and with me being on the set with Melissa. I think that there was this sense, like, I could look over, if you're the actress, and see somebody that understood what was going on in the middle of this male environment. And you, and I think Melissa also had commented on that at the time, that they were glad that my face was there all the time, basically. So
I was so glad that you were there. I mean, we were a minority. We were definitely a minority. It was a male-dominated universe.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of male energy. There was a lot going on. And there was, not for lack of wanting to understand, but there's a little disconnect sometimes between the male-female thing going on as far as work goes.
Sure.
But not within the writing. never within the writing.
No, gosh, we'll talk about that. That especially those first 3 episodes with you were just amazing.
That was a trip.
But do you want to back up and talk about just how you want to give us an overview of how you got into acting and how you got to Homicide? Had you
How I
worked with
got into
people
acting.
before?
Aside from the fact that I was always trying to make my sister laugh when we were little, I started in Chicago. I'm from Chicago, born and raised, and I started in the theater there. And I also was a member of the main stage at Second City for a couple of years. So I did a lot of improvisation, and we did 8 shows a week, 50 weeks out of the year, in front of a pretty large crowd. I think it held about 300 some odd people and who
Wow.
were all drinking. So that was always fun. And then,
Tough crowd.
yeah, tough crowd. Sometimes the neighbors got a little ornery. But it was the best tool that I had. I also was able to do, when I wasn't at Second City, prior to that, I got my training there in Chicago. I worked at other theaters like the Goodman and Wisdom Bridge and, Northlight Rep, where, oddly enough, one of the directors who came on to observe, I think he might have been a friend of Jimmy's, Yashimura's.
Mm.
And I had worked with him in the theater way back in Chicago. Michael Maggio, yeah.
Second City, that's a big launching pad for a lot of people, Second City. Yeah.
Well, it is a big launching pad, but I was probably the only person who did not want to go on Saturday Night Live. Why? I didn't know.
Right.
I did not know. And they were pretty, that's another story. I don't even know if I want to tell that one.
That's fine.
That could be for other podcasts.
Yeah, that'll be for another podcast. It's not about homicide, so let's not go there. But after Second City, we even did a stint in New York. They wanted our company to go to New York. We did this crazy show called Orwell That Ends Well, and they wanted us to perform at the Village Gate. It wasn't a touring company, but they took our company, and we were there for quite a few months. Village Gate is no longer there. So I got a chance to live in New York. I always thought I'd end up in New York. I always thought I'd end up in New York. And then I got a gig in Los Angeles. It was weird. There was a couple of gentlemen who wanted to manage me, who came to Second City. Why they asked me, I don't know, but they asked me. So I went out to Los Angeles for pilot season. I didn't get anything during my 2-week vacation from Second City. Then I flew back. And then there was this one thing that they wanted me to audition for. It was a period piece, and I love period pieces. Love them. It was a Western. And they asked these people, the network, if they could fly me out. And they're like, we don't even know who she is. We don't know her. Why would we fly her out? So I did, I think, one of the very first self-tapes. I had my
Really?
agent.
Wow.
Yes. I said, okay, all right. So I had my agent use a VCR and record me, and then we FedExed the recording of my audition to Los Angeles, and then they flew me out.
Nice.
So they flew me out to meet with the male lead, who happened to be Matthew Perry's dad, John Benaperry.
Oh, wow.
Get out. I'm just reading his memoir right now.
Yeah.
Matthew Perry's memoir.
And yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
We're losing so many people. We'll talk about that later, but it's very strange. I don't know if it's because of my age or what have you, but there's so many. But I digress. So I met with him, and then I was getting ready to come back on a plane because I had to go to work. I have a working mentality. I'm from Chicago, so I had to get back to go on a plane. And then they stopped me and they said, well, "We don't have any footage of you. Can you just put on some makeup, hair and makeup, and do an MOS for 2 minutes just talking to the crew?" I think so. They were hoping that I didn't look weird on camera. So that's what I did. I had no footage. It was the strangest initiation into getting a job. And I literally came to Los Angeles with a gig. Joyce Sloan who was the Earth Mother of Second City, and Brittany Solins weren't too happy about my leaving, but there was always someone there to be able to take your place, and I was gone. I ended up in LA.
Wow.
And the rest is history. And, and then I was there, and then I didn't get an audition for like 3 months. I'm like, why? And it turned out because they thought I was Irish. I played an Irish immigrant. They said, we don't need any Irish actors. And my agent was like, she's from Chicago.
You must be very convincing. It's good.
Apparently.
You did such a good job, huh? That's a Chicago accent, not an Irish accent.
Yeah,
That's so funny.
No, yeah, I did that.
That's funny. What show was that? Was it a feature or a TV movie or?
It was a backdoor pilot made for TV movie that we shot in Santa Fe called Independence. And there's a lot of things called Independence, but it was my initiation into, that world of film and television. And it was great. That was my first gig, and it was a lot of fun. My first film gig.
Nice. Western. Those are fun.
Those are fun. Would love to do one of those again.
So how did you cross paths or get on to Homicide? How did that happen? They were looking for an Irish cop, right?
Oh, ridiculous. Yeah, I was off. I don't remember what I just finished. No, I did Dear John for 4 years. A comedy. I was doing something else. I might have come off a pilot, but I think it was summer or close to summer, and I wasn't working, which is when I decided, my hairdresser and I, because I like to play around with looks and costumes and things like that. And I've been every color under the sun, and I've never been blonde. So I decided, well, let's try blonde. I've never been a blonde. So then I got cast, and I had to stay blonde, which was weird. So that's what did that. And that's why I became a blonde, but not why I got Homicide. I don't know if that was a detriment or if it was meant to be. But I auditioned, and the casting director at the time worked with me a little bit because it was such a naturalistic, almost minimalist kind of acting style, right? And I was just, and it was great. It was so much fun, and I loved the script, and I loved the character. And he saw something, and he went, I want to give you this adjustment. And I said, okay. And we did that. And then he sent it off, and I was expecting to go in front of the network after that, if it went any further. And I didn't. They just had me meet with Barry.
Straight to the top.
First time I met Barry, when they said, we want you to meet with Barry now. And I was like, okay, this is new, kind of a thing. So he was shooting Disclosure.
Yes.
And I came to meet with him, and I didn't read for him. I didn't do anything. I just met with him. He was on a break. They were doing something, and I was fascinated by the set. So I just started asking him a lot of questions. I was like, so what? And, oh, are you doing this? There's so much glass here. I said, how are you shooting with this? And is this like a metaphor for trying to get into, I was picking his brain about what he was doing. So I don't know what he got from me. I don't know.
Interesting.
And
he
then
must have been impressed.
I don't know. I don't know why. I was just curious. I think I have a curiosity. I like to do research. I like doing that sort of thing.
Were there much notes on the character in that process before you met Barry at all?
Like what they were looking for. Yeah.
They were looking for a lieutenant. I don't remember the notes that they gave me, but my instinct was to make her human first. They said, she's the female cop. She's the lieutenant in a male-dominated environment. And I knew I couldn't go in there trying to be a guy.
Right.
Or trying to act like a tough guy. That was not, that's not equality. That's not for me. I mean, if you already lean that way, great. I had to make it work for me. So I had to make her a person first. And she's a person. And like myself, I was raised in a kind of on the south side of Chicago. So I'm one of those
Mm.
people that doesn't look like she came from some kind of a tough background. And I never looked like I fit into that sort of environment, but I lived there and I lived it and I observed it. And I was this kid and I was this like good kid. But I was in this weird environment and it was just, how do you survive that? So I just was that kid. I was the person who had the background, who had the knowledge, and if you were going to talk to me, or if I'm not going to go head to head with you if we're yelling. A guy could always yell louder than me.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense if I'm giving orders, and I'm not going to try to dominate them. That would be not the way. And you cannot argue with someone and bring them over to your side. They just dig in deeper. So whenever I had a confrontation, I lowered my voice. I started whispering.
You had a lot of confrontations with the male. Yeah. Had you played a cop before?
I think so. I don't know before that. I don't know if I had, but I read a bit of David Simon's book before. So I got the idea and I went, oh, these guys are like Chicago, only different. I understood the gallows humor. I understood that from Second City. I understood that, I understood how you had to sort of block off your feelings in order to do your job and how it became something that you had to do in order to get a broader perspective of the situation. So, and be able to be objective going in and looking at a case. And I would get quieter if I was confronted by one of my fellow officers or one of the guys that I was trying to get to. So they would have to come in and listen and hear what I had to say because my job was to be heard and understood.
And you had the authority. They couldn't argue with ultimately they couldn't argue with that authority, right?
They weren't supposed to argue with the authority, but we know how that goes.
Yeah. There's a few scenes that pop into my head as you describe this. So the first one that pops in my head is the fight between Pembleton and Gaffney, and I think you pull Pembleton's gun out, and you can shoot one another if you want to. And it's brilliant scene.
Go ahead.
That was the scene that they wrote. It was sort of the scene that it had to be done in order to establish her as an authority. And Andre was like, I would never do that. I would never let anybody grab my gun. And I went, we're going to have to do it for this. And so how would we make it happen? How are we going to make that happen for that? And we were directed in that. And I learned all about firearms and guns and things like that. Prior to doing that, I went to a range. I learned how to shoot a gun, even though a homicide detective never really takes out their gun. But I knew my background had to dictate that I knew what to do. I felt like I had to know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I didn't have the opportunity like some of the other guys to ride around with the police department or the homicide division or pick their brains. It happened really fast, my coming onto the show. It was like within a span of 2 weeks.
Yeah. If you've listened to some of the other episodes, Reed talked about, and this is interesting, it's like the opposite dynamic for you. Reed talked about coming in as a greenhorn into the ensemble cast, and his character was coming in as a greenhorn into this ensemble homicide unit. You were coming in new in the middle of an established show, established ensemble cast, but your character had to be already established. You had to already know everybody. You already knew your job. You had to already have that authority. You had all these things that as an actor coming in, you didn't have. You were jumping into this probably fairly scary, dynamic, but you just come in and you're like a part of the furniture. I mean, you're already there, established character, and you played it to the nth degree. I mean, there was no doubt in my mind as soon as you come onto the screen that everybody knows you, that G already trusts you, that there's already this dynamic of not trusting the woman lieutenant. There's all this stuff that you jump into. So how was that as an actor having to come into that, although you were coming in green, but not being able to use that. You had to come in as an expert,
No, I was able to use some of that because I knew what came before me, having reading the script and knowing what people say about you, and what people say about you regardless. As an employee, what what reputation precedes you. So I knew that I was still a greenhorn to them, to not just to the cast, but to the characters.
Interesting point. Right.
So I knew that I had to establish something kind of quickly, and this is how it's going to be, and I'm not going to try to be like you, and I'm not going to try to make you do your job my way. I'm not going to make you work my way. I'm going to work your way. I'm going to adapt to you. So I adapted. It's what I do as an actor. I adapted and I watched, just like in my old neighborhood. I adapted and watched, and let's see what happens. So I have the utmost respect for each and every one of those actors. It was awesome and terrifying at the same time to walk in there, but I did not want to feel afraid. So I just thought, I'm going to dig in and I'm going to work. It's intimidating to walk in and see them all already established. Why is there a new character on the show? Why is she here? What's going on? Can she work? Is she going to hold her own? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I mean, you really carried that authority. Like, it made me think of Helen Mirren in Prime Suspect. I mean,
well, thank you.
You knew, that you knew your stuff. There was a very strong character to jump into.
No, I loved that character. I loved that she was so strong, and I loved that she was strong in a genderless way as well. Just a person. So I was a person who does this job, who still has to hold on to her vulnerability because she's also a mom. And that's how I approached it from the get-go.
Yeah. One question pops to my mind is, did you get an opportunity to sort of not hang out, but sort of shadow any real sort of detectives or chat with any real detectives, especially female police officers at all in your prep?
I didn't. I didn't have that opportunity. I tried, and if anyone was on the set who was, I would pick their brains. I would ask questions like I when I was with Barry, I would just ask questions about what they were doing. So I did that. I sort of played catchers catch can and did more and more research as I went along. And I spent a lot of time with Yaphet, and I picked his brain a lot. And I picked Daniel's brain a lot. And, not that those, I mean, there's still also actors and things like that, but I just got what I could and tried to slide in to the character. As someone who knows all this stuff, I have to do my research. If I'm going to do a character, I have to. So, and given the short amount of time that I had, I looked at footage of things before I came out there, and I just read the book, got an idea.
Yeah.
So,
did they have all 3 scripts written? Because that was a storyline that obviously went across 3. Your first 3 episodes was one storyline, the White Glove murders, and you jump in, and Barry Levinson is directing your first episode, and he only directed a few.
Yeah.
So did you know all 3 scripts ahead of time? Because there's really, really, really good those 3 episodes together. I think some of the best out of the whole show. And because of the complexity of the women characters and your dynamic with Melissa too, in the situations where you both had sensibilities and connections with the Beau character, especially when you came back after he had been murdered. So how did that all look to you? I mean, that just must have been an amazing bunch of scripts to get for your first couple episodes.
Yeah, really in deep end.
I'm trying to remember if I got all three at once or if I just got one at a time. I think as soon as I got them, I read them. But I trusted the writing so much that, I had to know where I was going. And if I didn't have the script, I think I was told where it was going to kind of go, or, had little bits of information. I wish I could remember. I don't know. I don't know. It's too long ago, dang it.
Sure. Oh, believe me, we all feel that. Not remembering stuff.
Very good script. Jorge Zamacona's the lead writer on that particular first episode. There's really, there's so many things kind of going on because it's sort of dealing with sexism, it's dealing with relationships, it's obviously this killer and the politics of it. There's so much going on in those 3 episodes.
Yeah, there's so many layers to it. And it was such a great thing to dive into. But as I said, wasn't a lot of lead time, including the fact that my first day on the set, I'm so used to, I think I must have done a couple of cop shows before then because I was so used to the TV blocking. They're going to block you. They're going to do this. So I went up there. I did not know. Our first scene, the very first scene, was that rooftop scene. Do you remember that scene from the?
With Melissa?
No, the rooftop scene in the first, in the white gloves. The very first episode that I came on was the first episode of the season that Barry was directing, and there was a news guy there. So we went up on the roof.
Oh yes, Tony Todd. Yeah, Tony Todd. Great actor.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. So I get up there and there's this roof and it's very sunny. And I walk on set and Jean was there and he goes, "You could just go anywhere." And I went, "Wait, what?"
Yeah.
But it was that combination. And I remember that Jean said the same thing. You're prepared. He was prepared to direct, but you had that 1 minute, that 1 30-second thing of, holy crap, I can go anywhere. What if I don't deliver in my where I'm going kind of a, but then my improv background, which I love improv and I love the spontaneity of it. So initially for 30 seconds, that sentence took me by surprise, although I don't know that I even blinked. I just went, "Oh, okay." And proceeded to do it. And it was the most freeing thing ever. I thought, oh, I have this stage because I come from the stage. I could do whatever I want. I don't need to worry about my mark. I don't need to worry about anything. How can we make this look good? Do I need to move more? But Jean seemed to just be following. So I just did my thing and moved where I was kind of motivated to move. And it made so much sense. And it was so good and so fluid. And it was exhilarating to come off doing that first scene. And I thought, yeah.
And it looks so great. There's one scene with in one of these, and I just rewatched these the last day or so. So then I can't remember which one it was, but one of the scenes on the roof with Kyle, and this goes to your point about not having the hit marks with Kyle and Andre. I think they're talking about Kyle's uncle, that had abused him and that he was trying to be nice to. And Andre had followed him and found out what was happening. And they're talking and Kyle's in the background and Andre's in the foreground. And the whole scene plays with them sort of separated like that. And just at the end, as they're about to land on the last shot, Andre's in the foreground and he sort of covers Kyle. And I thought, in the traditional world of filmmaking, somebody would said, "Cut, we have to reset it. I couldn't see Kyle. Andre, could you step over here? Could you do this?" And in the world of Homicide, Jean just took a step and a half to the left and revealed both of them, still Andre in the foreground and Kyle in the background. Beautiful end shot, like button to the scene. but they didn't have to change what they had done in the scene, and they didn't have to change their emotion or their reaction to each other. He just very quietly slides over and has this beautiful composition at the end. So I think that gets to what you're talking about, where there wasn't a sense that you had to double think where I have to be. I can just be the character, right? Is that how it felt?
And I can just do my performance, and I can just be. It really helped the actors to just try to just be in character. And I love that he was always there. I thought of him as the yoga master of, camera work. He was Yoda to me too.
He was a yoga and Yoda master,
the Baryshnikov of, whatever. It was he was seamless, and it was so impressive. I spent most of my time just watching him when I wasn't working. Because it was fascinating and so freeing, and you got the best performances. I think someone had mentioned that it was what we called the sloppy show. The sloppy show? I don't think so.
It wasn't well received initially.
Well, initially it was, I think the first episode or the first couple of episodes were a little bit more jarring. I think it was before Jean got there.
Yeah, the first season was a different cameraman and had a different style.
Yeah, it was a different style. I still love the jump cuts, but it was different than Jean's. And I don't know what that was like to work with. I'm sure maybe it was the same. Was it the same kind of, do you know?
The first season was a lot looser. I know Jean, because I always felt Jean's photography caught the subtle moments better than the early seasons. The early seasons was more verite and jump cutty, whilst with Jean's work, he was using the movement a lot more to kind of catch moments and emotions. And I thought, and I think that's where it kind of became, he was talking to us about he created some sort of system. I still don't fully understand how he created this system, but he did have some sort of way of doing that. And it was because he was hired off the back of a feature film that developed that style. And I forgot the name of the feature film now.
It was I forgot it too. But dang it,
it's in
gravity something.
Laws of gravity.
Laws of gravity. Yeah. But technically,
Yeah.
yes, it was the same cameras. It was the same cameras, and they were handheld. So they'd started.
It's just a different
with the
style.
same idea. It just a different style when John came in.
Just a different style. But I didn't have an opportunity to work with, who was the other cameraman?
Wayne Ewing was the first cameraman.
Yes, Wayne Ewing, and I didn't have an opportunity to work with him because I came in season 3. But I was just enamored of Jean. Can I just say one more thing about Jean?
Please tell us everything.
Absolutely. Keep going. Everything you want to tell us.
There was one shot. I don't know if anybody mentioned it because I didn't hear I didn't hear Kyle's broadcast. Anyway, I don't know if anybody's mentioned it already, but there was a shot where we had to go down the stairs and they had Jean. It was like they were carrying royalty. They had him. He was perched on top of 2 rails as if they were carrying, an Indian prince. And he was just sitting there doing it. Like he could have smacked the pavement any moment, but he was just sitting there and they carried him. They carried him down the stairs.
Right. The sedan chair. The
sedan chair. That was what it was. Oh my. And then his little like yoga moves where he would sit cross-legged and just sit down and just go, okay. And he'd just slide back and forth. The man was way ahead of his time. And I don't know anybody who has learned how to do it the same way since. Do you?
Yeah, it was kind of amazing to watch. I worked with a cameraman that did a lot of handheld with a 35 millimeter camera, but there was no style like Jean had. And the thing that was cool about that was that those kinds of things that the grips and electricians and everybody had to invent for the show made it just as creatively exciting for the crew as it did for the actors and directors and for Jean. So it sort of all that filtered through because it was new and different.
It was a real ensemble show, from the writing to the acting to the crewing. That's how I felt, because you had to all come together. You had to be the scaffolding for one another.
Mm-hmm.
You had to, whether you wanted to or not, you kind of had to. The actors were always on camera, which was great, because when you went to work, you actually worked. And I like that. I love that sort of thing. I don't like dropping back out of a character and then having to build up the energy again and coming back in. You actually worked, and you worked for everyone. It was an egalitarian kind of a place. It just was, in my opinion. Of course, Andre was always just that one notch above. I adored him.
He's kind of amazing.
I really did. He was pretty amazing. Did you ever see him do Shakespeare? I mean, not just on set.
Exactly, not just on set. Exactly.
Because he would break into Shakespeare on set.
Oh, would he? Oh, cool.
Oh,
wow.
yeah. He was amazing. Yeah. And then where he ended up in comedy was like, man, you've done it all.
Yeah, he was very good in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It was such a it was such a great performance.
It's interesting though that you say that you know, a lot of actors had to sort of, I think, maybe had a longer adjustment period to that style of shooting, when if you come from Second City and you come from thinking on your feet, and you don't necessarily come from, okay, stop, you know, we're going to do the close up. You're just going to be off camera doing the reactions. You know, you can read off camera, or you can go back to your trailer and somebody will stand there and read the lines for the actor. And that was never, it was always, everybody was always in the scene and always on. So was that something that you were able to bring from Second City?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think, yes. I think my improv background is one of the best tools that I've ever had as an actor. I highly recommend it for any actor. If you can learn how to improvise, you will never be at a loss as to what to do. So you just have to do your other work. You have to be in character. You have to act and think like that character. But to improvise, yeah, I once improvised a whole half a scene on stage when somebody forgot their cue. You know, and it was not even a problem for me. I thought I was can I tell you this one anecdote?
Yes.
I was a newbie. I came on to take Deborah Jo Rupp's place in this comedy called A Girl's Guide to Chaos, because she got this little thing called That 70s Show. So she had to leave, right? So I was doing another sitcom and came on. So I thought, when I had one rehearsal with them and then came on, we were supposed to do this scene and the lights come up and the actor is not there. And the first thing that went through my head was, oh, they're fucking with me. You know, and I thought it was funny because I come from Second City where everybody screws with. Can I say that on camera?
Yes, absolutely.
So I thought, oh, you know, they're just messing with me. So I went on and I thought, I'll pull a Bob Newhart. I was calling her on the phone. The lights came up. She was supposed to pick up. So I was just I was talking on the phone. And then this person comes in behind me, about a minute later, with half dressed, no shoes on. She apparently, because it was a different actor on the set, just kind of lost track of where we were, was dressing for the other scene, was naked when she heard her cue, and couldn't get back on stage. And then I looked at her, and then she comes in, and I was oh shit. So I hang up. I said, oh, I was just leaving you a message. And I hang up the phone, and she starts talking to me to give me these lines. And I was like, wait a minute, you came all the way over here dressed like that to tell me this? And she said, don't, she whispered, don't improvise. And I was like, oh, she's not playing. Oh, shoot. You know, so I just, yeah. So I don't really care what you throw in front of me. Long story to get to that point. Sorry. Big snore.
On with the show.
No, it's good. It's good.
No, that was great. I love that. It just shows the ability that you had when you jumped into this situation where the camera never you never know where the camera's going to be, and you've always got to be on, and you've got to be in character, and you got to play through all the scenes all the time.
But everybody's got that ability. You just have to tap into it. You have to be willing to tap into it, and you got to trust it. That's it. And it's the not trusting that gets into trouble. So when you get that little bubble of fear happening, like I did for those 30 seconds it was like, nah, okay, done with that. What are we doing?
Yeah.
So.
And were there any fears over kind of performance continuity or anything like that, or any techniques you had to use?
I have a tool belt. I have a veritable tool belt of technique that I could draw from, but it's so kind of, I don't even think about it when I do that.
It's instinctive.
So maybe yes. I do operate quite a bit on instinct. It's my first impulse is usually the right one. So if I'm at a loss for something, that's what I go to. But the continuity of the character, I always have to know where I'm going and where I'm coming from, but I create that for myself. Because you have to.
Yeah.
And you have to know where you're going. You have to know when you're shooting something, obviously it's a given, where you have been and where you're coming from and where you're going next. You have to know that. But I just made stuff up if I didn't see it.
Yeah. Going into the ensemble cast, had you worked with any of the cast previously, or was everybody pretty much new to you?
I worked with Ned previously. I also worked with Yaphet previously, because when I saw him, I don't know if he remembered me until I told him, but we did a movie together. I can't remember what the name of it was. Don't ask me. We did a movie together, and I was so impressed. He's a formidable presence, But I had a picture taken with him when we were doing the Polaroids of something where my hand was against his hand, and I looked like a Lilliputian. I didn't know. It was big. It was ginormous. So I just reminded him of that picture, and he just started laughing. So I worked with him, and then I had actually done a sitcom, 6 episodes of The Boys with Ned Beatty, Doris Roberts, and and Chris Maloney and I were sort of moved over to this sitcom when this pilot that we did didn't go. And so I had worked with him on that, and then briefly talked with him about Homicide. Said, "Oh yeah, you get to go back to that show." He goes, we're picked up for 4 or something like that. I think it was the second season.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it was a weird pickup until they finally got the whole 23 going. Yeah, the first couple seasons were weird, truncated seasons. And you know what I realized, and I don't know, and you can tell me if you remember this at the time. I remembered it because I realized it recently, but I don't know that I remembered at the time that I worked with you on Real Men.
That's crazy. Yes. Oh my God.
And Jim Belushi. I saw something the other day. I was like, wait a minute. She was the wife in Real Men.
I was. And do you know that? And that was a moment where editing did not work in my favor.
The thing that was amazing about that movie was it was so, I'm going to say it, fucking funny when we shot it.
It was funny.
And it wasn't.
No, when it came out. Oh, no.
I mean, John Ritter and you, and it was brilliant. I mean, they had to stop rolling the cameras so much because the crew was cracking up. And then it didn't, and I don't mean to get off the track, but I had just realized like you and I had worked on something else before.
It did not. No, we have to talk about.
No, go for it.
Could it have been the editing? Because I don't know if it was the way that it was cut, because there was a moment in there, and it lends itself to how good this show was put together. I guess we could use that as a little bridge. But there was a moment where John says something to me, and I respond in a way to something that he had done with this look. And it was like a look of fear. And then they just showed that like for no reason. And I thought, okay, that looks really weird.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. It was sort of shocking. It was sort of the opposite of when we talked about this on another episode when I worked with Yaphet on Star Chamber, and remember thinking, what is he doing? Like I could not tell what he was doing. And he was so brilliant in that. So we're on Real Men, and it's like, I mean, it was some of the funniest stuff I have ever seen.
I am so glad you said that because I was beginning to doubt my
and
own.
then you watched it now, it's like, what was happening? Why did this movie get made?
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, so enough of a digression. I don't remember at the time if we remembered each other from that. So funny.
I don't know. I'm so glad you brought that up though.
Because you were so not totally different character. You know, you were sort of like almost like
I was the little
Kathleen Turner in Serial Mom.
Yeah.
You were sort of like the perfect little
little
wife.
A little Stepfordish.
In a satirical way. In a you know. But yeah, so sorry for that digression, Chris, but I had just realized that the other day.
No, not at all. It's good. It's good. Well, it leads in. I was because there's an obvious kind of chemistry between you and Yaphet. There's a respect and everything, and I was wondering if you'd met each other before. It just comes across like you're old colleagues. It's brilliant, and so yeah.
I didn't have that much to do with him in the film, so I didn't really know him that well. What I think, but he was very happy when he was working with me. And I think they did that a lot because it kept Yaphet happy. They put us together all the time in these scenes. So I did a lot of stuff with Yaphet. And the other thing was I let him dictate. If he wanted to try to do something, I was like, sure, let's just play.
Yeah.
I didn't care. I mean, I did care. I shouldn't say I don't care. My son says that all the time. What do you mean you don't care? I'm like, I mean, it doesn't really. I said, either way is fine. He goes, well, why didn't you say that? And it was.
Well, it was interesting in that it gave a depth.
I'm saying it now.
I think even a different level of depth of character to Yaphet to have that relationship with you and to have that respectful relationship with you. Like it was no doubt to him, like you knew how to do your job. You knew what you're doing. There wasn't any, there was no hesitation in his character that you knew what you were doing. And so I think that gave another level, even though he'd obviously, before you came, had already dealt with Melissa's character with Kay Howard. And of course, then, you know, she comes up, she's in more of an authority position when you come in, because at that point she's a sergeant. But, and I don't know what I'm talking about, but the interesting thing I thought also, the way it was written, was your first encounter with Melissa's character. You know, she's sort of about to say, wow, it's so great to be working with you. And you basically say, why are you standing around? We have a red ball. Get to work. What are you doing? And as you walk away, she goes, bitch. And so it was like such a great, it was such a great moment, because it could have been stereotypical, like, oh, the two women are really going to get along and they're going to support each other. And you guys had a prickly relationship. And I think until the Beau murder, where you come together in a way that's a little bit more understanding. But it was so great that it was written as a prickly relationship, where it could have been stereotypically like, oh, the girls are going to like each other. And that didn't happen. And how did you feel about that?
Yeah. I thought it was great, because we were completely different characters. Because I thought, oh, are they balancing it out a little bit? Are they making me a little bit more feminine? Because even the costume department made me, I loved my costumes.
Yes.
And those first couple of.
You had that pencil skirt on, girl, the first episode. I'm like, at least you had a slit in it so you could walk. I'm like, she's got a pencil. What's she going to be able to walk around the set? What's happening?
Yeah. But I I like all departments, meaning I try to work with them. So I tried to show off those clothes as best as I could.
Absolutely beautiful, beautiful wardrobe.
And I thought, if I'm going to do that, if I'm the girl who's made up and dressed up, and the opposite, and Melissa is like, this is me in all my beauty, just as I am, and take me or leave me,
Mhm.
But both of us had that take me or leave me kind of an attitude, which came together. And that was the point of contention, I think. So it's
Mm,
like my way, no, my way.
yeah.
Yeah, true. And I think for your character, when you get up to the lieutenant level, how do people expect you to look professionally? They want you to look like a professional working woman, as opposed to, the cop on the beat, who are all a little sort
Mm,
of rumpled. And of course, Melissa was really good at insisting no makeup. This is this character, and this is how she's going to
She
stay.
had that hair,
mm.
had gorgeous hair.
Yeah, you had to fit into that sort of professional look. Different. It was a different look for you. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I did. I looked completely different. I think that was intentional.
Mm.
So I kind of went with it, like the glam version or something. I don't know. But
But you were all business too. You were all business. There wasn't this sort of phony femininity. You were
no,
very straightforward, all business cop. You were.
which means you don't need to stereotype women characters. You can
Mm.
just be who you are. I loved that. I was just another character, and this was who I am, and my job is this, and that's who I am. And so this is how I'm going to choose to look. And they treated us as individuals,
Mm.
and everybody was an individual. And I remember you made the comment, Susan, about it being a very diverse set. Before diversity was, the flavor of the month. It's like, thank goodness we had this great diverse set. We had a lot of diversity, not just in skin tone,
Mm-hmm.
but also in personality, in the way that we thought about things. It was just, we brought this veritable ecosystem. We had this ecosystem of people. We had this mishmash of everything together, and we made it work.
Mm.
So somebody can identify with somebody somewhere who's watching.
Everybody was unique. It was a very unique ensemble. Everybody was different. You're right. Absolutely.
That takes a lot of creativity. And I think my hat goes off to everyone who's involved in this show. The creative process was never lacking.
No. Any, this may segue well. Any memories of working with any particular actors on the show? Because we've talked about Yaffa. You were partnered up at one point with Richard Belzer, and so on. There's some really great actors, so many great actors in that show. Any memories you'd like to share?
Oh, what you mean? The memories that I can actually draw from?
The remaining memories.
I wish the remaining brain cells that I have
That's
left.
funny because I realized
Yeah.
I didn't think at the time also, I am 3 months older than you. At the time, I would have never thought that. I always thought the actors were all experienced and older than me because I'm just a kid banging the slate. I'm like, wait a minute. So there you go. Yeah. Whatever memories are still there. Yeah. Please
Yeah.
share.
No, here we go. Yeah, that haven't prolapsed out of my left ear. What? There's so many. It was different working with Yafet than it was working with Richard. And part of that was that I wasn't used to working with Richard so much,
Yeah.
but it was so much fun working with Richard as well. Once we got that, I was again the newbie. I was the newbie. And by that time, my character had been, promoted and double demoted. And so there I was.
Yeah, by Barnfather. Yeah.
That was, I don't know that they knew what to do with me. We couldn't keep having
Right.
red balls. I'm going to move on. I'll come back to this. We couldn't keep having red balls. That was the only time that Yafet and I could work together, and our paths could cross. And I wasn't with this other group of detectives. So they had to come up with something. So then they promoted me. And then they, I guess, didn't like that. And I didn't have a lot to do except to reprimand the people around me.
Yeah.
And as well as Yafet. And so that caused a strain in our relationship. Not as actors, but as characters.
Characters, yeah.
And then that was okay. But then they double demoted me, which was a lot more fun. So I got to go back on the street.
Yeah.
So I got to play all these different roles as one character, which was really interesting.
Yeah, and not to keep going back to those first 3 episodes,
Yeah.
but there's so many different levels that you had to achieve in the character. You know, the professional hard-ass lieutenant, you know, who gets to take down, and I always get their name. There's Garrity and Garrity. I mean, the one the nasty one that ended up moving up, right? That you took down a couple pegs and had him sent down to the like evidence room or something. That was a great.
That was Gaffney.
That was a great.
Gaffney.
That was Gaffney,
right?
Then there's a mirror episode later on when he becomes the captain.
That was a great confrontation. Yeah.
Which is, he was the guy that I whispered to. I didn't whisper, but I was very quiet.
Yeah.
He was one of those, he was just giving me so much crap, and who just didn't talk any louder. And it actually forced him as an actor to come close. I didn't mean so that was interesting.
I actually wrote down a quote after that scene. I think you're talking to Yaphet, and you say about that confrontation, he turned his mistake into my problem, and I had to just stand there and rise above it. And the way you rose above it was just to assume your authority and basically, like, just tell me where you want to go, because that's where you're going. You're out of here, you know, without hesitation. That was a great scene.
Mm-hmm. I loved that scene.
Right. They weren't afraid to be very blunt with the racist and sexist interactions that could happen in that kind of environment. I mean, they were pretty upfront with showing that. I thought was also ahead of its time.
Which was definitely ahead of its time. Yeah, definitely ahead of its time. I was going to go off on a tangent about something else but about that, but no.
You can go on a tangent.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, we're not going to go on no tangents right now. It's okay. I have a question. I have a question for you, Susan. What?
No.
Well, I don't know if you. Yes. Do you know, because of the amount of time that Yaphet and I spent in that room, what were the conversations with the lighting crew?
Oh.
Because we were impossible to light together.
Yeah.
You know that, right? I mean, look at me. I am like paler than pale.
We talked about that. If you haven't listened to the Josh and Joe episode, the Gaffer and the Key Grip episode.
Oh.
You know, there was a
okay.
And we talked about how well lit the show was for having so many different skin tones. And what they would do was they'd have to bring in a special light, either the paper Chinese lantern, which was on the end of a boom pole, or a Kino on the end of a boom pole, something to get some light only specifically for Yaphet when he was in a scene with you or Reed or any other, you know, very light-skinned actor. But if you watch the show, it never looks wrong. It always looks right. So there was there was great effort made, and Jean and Alex were very, very aware of that, and they made sure that everybody's skin tones, no matter what they were correctly, and it also had to be done in a flash, right? Everything had to be quickly done and had to be ready to go.
That's what I meant.
And so it would have been something like that. It would have been. Maybe Josh was in there with a light. Maybe they clipped another light into the ceiling. I don't know, but they were always very aware of having to do that.
Oh, I know. That's actually more of what I meant. They were always ready. And what I was thinking about was there like all this groaning going on, like, oh crap, now we gotta, oh dear, you know, what are we gonna do now? To bring in the big guns? No,
I don't think so. I think it was all part of, like I was saying before, this idea of how adaptive the grips and electricians and the camera people, how adaptive we all had to be to that unusual shooting situation, the handheld nature of it, the fact that that the camera saw everything all the time, which was a hell of a really difficult for the sound guys trying to stay out of the shots and get good sound. So I think it became, once the package came together and once everybody understood this is what we're doing. You know, we're doing a shot with Yaphet, and we're doing a shot with you, or we're doing a shot with Yaphet and Reed, or we're doing a shot where there's this huge contrast between the actors. And we have the package ready. It's ready to go, and it's going to make it look good. But it has to be fast, it has to be there, and it has to be ready. And I think that was one of the things that kept everybody interested and engaged
Well,
in the show, for
like
sure.
everybody else, like the actors weren't the only ones who were always on. You guys had to be on too. We were all working.
Never sit down.
Yep. We were all working. It was a working environment.
Yeah.
I love that. It was like a blue collar versus the white collar
Yeah.
kind of thing. It was a blue collar set in that sort of way.
I luckily had been trained by somebody that literally said that. As a camera assistant, you never sit down. I mean, I was trained that, and also you never turn your back on the camera. Never. You always have to have your eyes on it. And so that was a good training to have before I came on that show, because you couldn't turn around.
I loved our crew.
Great crew.
Well, this might segue nicely. Was there such thing as a typical day on set for you as an actor? And can you talk to us a little bit about maybe if you had a sort of routine, or what was it like being on the set of Homicide on a sort of day-to-day basis?
You came prepared. We had a good laugh in the makeup. You go in, I would go into the makeup trailer. I had to spend time there, unlike Melissa, who would come in and go, "Yeah, am I good?" She'd go back out. I spent time in there. I got blonder as the seasons went on, because that's, I guess, the nature of being blonde. I learned, and I would talk with them, and we would do hair and makeup, and they were so happy to be when they were doing wounds and and horrific looking scars and getting all the bodies in order. That's when they were happy. With me, they were just like, hey, so we would talk. But I was always fascinated by what they were doing to somebody else. Right. So that was the beginning of the day. And so you go, oh, you're that dead person. Okay. So then you'd go on the set, and you had to be prepared. So I was still like looking and thinking about what I was going to be doing. Didn't know what to expect as far as how we're going to do it. And we just did it. But what I did do was I prepared a lot ahead of time. You have to know your business or your lines so well, and your character and all that, so that you can just start to play, because that's what it was. It was work, but it was also play. You really got to play with one another. That's what I loved. So I got to play every day, and I got to work every day. And it was a good tired by the end of the day.
That's true. It was a good tired usually.
Yeah. You felt like you did something.
We did good work, right? It was good work.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't any of this like, oh, it was a good tired.
What was it like working on Homicide in comparison to like other shows in terms of like the pace and things like that?
I can't think of anything that I enjoyed more as far as drama goes. I love doing sitcoms, because who doesn't want to go to work every day and make somebody laugh? But these guys would do that anyway, because got Belzer on the set.
You said cut.
They would make each other laugh and moving on. But I really liked doing comedy. And at that time when I was coming up, it was unheard of for a comedic actress to do drama and vice versa. But I liked doing them both. But as far as the pacing goes, the days went by pretty fast, as far as I could tell. I mean, there was some, sitting around in between when we had to set something, but it was a work day. And the pacing was good. I've never done anything like it since, and I wish I could do it again. um, that combination of the writing and the camera work and the way that people were working and the work mentality that happened, um, the work ethic that happened on that show, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I've
Yeah.
never seen it since.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, one other random question. I'm going to combine sort of two questions in one. When we were talking to Reed, I was asking him, like, with the pace of the show, how did you not get sick? And he said he did get sick. And then the second question said that what were your sort of survival techniques for getting through a show like this? And also, there was a lot of night work on the show as well.
Oh.
Did you have any particular ways of handling that?
Oh, there's some interesting.
The nightmare of night work.
Yeah, especially when I got to be a detective again. Wow, there's some really interesting stories. Thank you for bringing that up. We shot in a lot of interesting places, did we not, Susan? I think we shot in crack houses that were unoccupied at the time.
Places
and,
you would never see ever if you hadn't worked on that show.
Ever. I remember one time we shot, I think it was in the projects somewhere. Where were we? Anyway, we were shooting. It was cold. You do get sick. But you get well. Hopefully. I think it was Meldrick and I were doing Meldrick and Russert were out on something, and you had to make sure that you knew what you were doing. People all came out. You got to talk to people that you would normally not ever be able to talk to. You got to visit places that would normally be, you would never be invited into, much less welcomed into.
Welcomed, exactly.
You were welcomed.
Yep.
And to the point where I had a conversation with a couple of little kids. And I had my Glock, and they're like, "Is that your Glock?"
Right.
I went, no, he said, wait, what did he say? He goes, "That's a Glock, isn't it?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Can I see it?" I went, "No, it's my Glock." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Go get your own Glock." And I'm like, "Why?" He's like 8. How does he know what a Glock is? And why would he want to see it? And and what kind of, what's happening? And, but no, you can't touch my Glock. You never touch my Glock. You can't ever don't touch another person's gun. And there was another time when we were working somewhere, and we were in a row house, and there was no sheets on the kids' beds. And initially I thought, is it because we were coming in? And then I realized, no, they don't have any. They just have the bed. And it almost, and I thought, I think I was trying to get sheets. I bought some sheets, and I was going to drop them at the door. And I don't remember if I did or not, like a couple of days later. Just wanted to drop them, but then I didn't know what would happen to them. I didn't know if I would I be insulting someone?
Right.
So I don't know whatever happened with that idea, but I wanted so desperately I bought them, and I don't remember if I just left them or if I decided not to. It was weird.
Yeah.
I was asking around, can I do this? And I don't know. I didn't know. I did not know what to do, Susan.
The show is definitely an eye-opener. And we just dropped an episode early with David Simon, and he talked about, here I am, a white kid from Montgomery County, ends up on the police beat in Baltimore and going to places, this is when he was a journalist, that he would never have gone before. And all the things he learned and all the voices he heard and all the lives and the way that people lived that he had never, seen before, was a huge education for him. And I feel that way, even though, of course, like, I'm on a film crew, like, I'm not a cop, But we worked, it wasn't play. When we went into those neighborhoods, it wasn't fake. It was like you said, it was a real row house where people were living in real poverty. And I remember one place we were working in a row house, and I think we were just working upstairs, and the downstairs we hadn't lit. It was very dark, and we went upstairs, and I had to hit the slate and run into the bathroom or something, and it was just not good. Somebody opened a drawer because they were trying to lighten the room or do something, and like a million cockroaches just scattered every direction. And as I'm walking down the stairs, I'm feeling sad, but I'm walking down the stairs, and I actually said out loud, I can't believe people live like this. And 3 of the kids were sitting in the living room, in the dark living room, and heard me say that, I'm sure, the white girl from the suburbs, who comes out. And then I spoke to the mother, who was outside, very well dressed, put together, wonderful working woman. She's just trying to keep her life together with whatever, poverty level wages she was getting. But it was like you just said, an absolute education for the crew. Absolutely.
We got to receive that level of understanding that most people on the planet will never. They never will. You can travel within a certain level of what have you.
And I don't think the people whose homes we went into and neighborhoods we went to, I may be wrong about this. I don't think they felt exploited. I think they felt seen in a way they hadn't been before. Because the show was not painted to look pretty. It was Baltimore.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they were sticklers for realism, because if you did something that was off, they'd laugh. I mean, when we were at that shoot, somebody did something. Somebody did something with a rifle and one of the kids or a couple people just started cracking up like, you're never going to do that. And it was
right.
like,
check that reality, right?
Yeah, it was you had to do what was completely authentic. And I don't remember what that moment was.
Was it from Sniper or something, or was it something else?
I'm so sorry. I did not mean to come unprepared, but I was looking for episodes.
You're not unprepared, because that makes sense. That makes sense that that kind of confrontation, that kind of interaction. Of course, those first 3 episodes are great, and then Chris and I also looked at your last couple episodes, with the Bow murder part. And I'd love to talk to you about that, because here's the two, and obviously portrayed different ways, but you and Melissa, Kay, and Lieutenant, what's your name? Your character's name?
Russert.
Russert.
Yeah.
Russert. The two, you get pulled off of the case when they finally figure out Bo was murdered and hadn't committed suicide, and then Yaphet says, his ex-wife doesn't want to have anything to do with him. You have to make, and I love the way he said, you have to make a funeral. And your face when he said that was like clicking through all these, like, obviously you had, had an involvement with him, an emotional connection, but also I could see you're clicking, but wait a minute, I'm the lieutenant. Are you doing that just because I'm a woman? Like, why? There's all these things swirling around. But those scenes in the house with you and Melissa going to pull out what he's going to be buried in, and you come in running in from outside because there's lightning. I mean, I love the idea that they made I'm assuming we made rain that day. I don't know that was real rain.
Remember.
And the lightning, very gothic as you go into basically the death house. But those scenes, because you and Melissa were both so emotionally connected with him, her as a partner professionally and you as a romantic partner, that those scenes together with you two were just absolutely terrific.
I loved being able to connect with her.
I loved having, you had to pull out stuff that was not cop stuff. This was a whole different level of emotionality.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to remember the details. of it.
Well, you basically come in and it strikes you like it hits you like a ton of bricks that this is where
Oh yeah,
this is where he died.
This is where he.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He died. Yeah, you see the two scenes. You got the scene where he was sat in the chair, which was staged, and then you got the bathroom where he was
Right.
actually shot. And I think that's where the scene ends. Is you look in the bathroom and see the hole in
Yeah.
the wall, and take it all in, and it kind of hits you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That he didn't. Yeah. That he wasn't the I guess weak or what is the word I'm looking for? Wasn't weak.
He hadn't given up.
He hadn't given up.
Right. It was a different
He didn't give up.
situation that was initially portrayed. I mean, I
Yeah.
teared up watching those scenes. It's really,
Yeah.
really connected.
They were very connected for me as well. And
Yes.
and then I'm sure some music played that would just enhance what was happening. And that would make it even more so. So I find myself being able to work on the show, and then when you'd watch the episodes, you'd start to blubber because everything just came together. All the elements came together, all of them.
The music always nailed it. Even though the scene was already nailed, the music would come in.
It added that extra level.
And also, I love one of the very close to the end of that second episode where you show up at the junkyard and Pembleton turns to you and Melissa and says, it's even though he had been the primary, he said, this is your collar. This is the way Bo would have wanted it. And so the two women detectives go in, to catch the murderer. Of course, he's fled already. But so many good choices for your character. Yeah.
Yeah. And not all made by me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were made by the writers.
So well written.
Chris, when you asked me about who I enjoyed working with, because I didn't have a chance to look at all the episodes, and they come flooding back. You know the process.
Yeah.
Once you hear something or once you see something, more things come back.
It all comes in, yeah.
Tim Russert was I loved being able to meet my cousin.
Right.
Yes.
That was great. I love how they just throw stuff like that in.
With him. That was another great moment of just being able to pick his brain for a little bit, and how smart he was. And there's another one that we lost.
Oh gosh, I don't think I knew that.
Yes, gone. Yeah.
And he comes up in the stakeout episode, which is one of my favorite ones, even though it's not a big one for your character, but there's a funny little moment where the wife mentions Tim Russert and you say, oh, he's my cousin. And then she sort of says, oh, that's good. And then she mentions she watches somebody else. It was quite a funny little moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no, I mean the other
so
one.
Good.
Something.
Yeah. Well, are there any episodes that stand out for you that there are strong memories around, either whether it's the storyline or whether it's a memory of doing it, or is there any particular things that still stand out?
The one that is really vivid is when I first got on that show, is that 3-episode arc, and everything that was involved with that. That was because it was like my first trip to Disneyland or something. There was so much going on and so much happening, and so it was amazing.
Yeah, that was the complexity of the writing of those 3 episodes. What they wove together was really wonderful.
Was kind of my favorite, and partially is because I'm trying to remember some of the other episodes. I remember the one where I was working with Kathy Bates, who was directing.
Oh yes,
Chris just mentioned
that
was
one. Hang on, let me just. Sorry, I'll find my note a second. It's Scenes of the Crime, which is you're with Munch and you're investigating a shooting in the maze, which is this apartment complex. There's the episode with Stuart Garty, the patrol officer who stays in his car whilst this shooting happens. It's a really good episode.
Yeah, it's a great.
And then you meet Garty later on in the boat episode.
Yeah, and the kids shot them. I remember. Oh, that was something. Oh, and Kathy. Oh, we were in this place. I wasn't. We were in. It wasn't. It was underground. It was dirt and needles and all kinds of stuff. and I had to pull Kathy aside. Kathy was I was pregnant
Mm.
at that
Wow.
time.
Okay.
That's why I remember it. And there was a scene where I had to put a scarf on, and it was because I said, I don't think I'm supposed to be in here.
Ooh, okay.
I said,
Right.
can we talk about this? I said, no one knows that I'm
Right. We did
pregnant
not
yet.
know that. We did not know.
Oh,
Okay.
you know who did know? The prop guys. The two
Ah,
prop guys
uh-huh.
figured it out. Came up to me one day and went, "Are you pregnant?"
Really? Brooke and Jeff. Was it Brooke and Jeff?
Brooke and Jeff. Brooke and Jeff. You have no idea. Can you describe Brooke and Jeff? Brooke, they were so cute. But, and they were adorable, but they were not. I mean, they were tattooed.
They were
and
the bad boys, right? Take that in
The
a good
little
way, you
bad
guys, when
boys.
you hear that. Yeah, the bad boys.
When you hear that, I adored them,
and Lester.
but
And before that, Mike Sabo,
God.
I think. But yeah, that's interesting. So they knew. That's what.
those
Boy, they were
two,
keeping their eye on you. Huh?
from right from the get-go. I didn't tell them, Susan. I walked in and I said said something, and they just looked at me. Both of them, they looked at each other and they went, "Are you pregnant?" And I just and I burst into tears. They went, "Oh yeah, she's pregnant."
Wow.
It was like,
Wow.
and it was very early on.
Wow.
So they were the only ones, but it turned out that they could be because I didn't know what I was going to do with that. I was like, I have to tell them. I'm not sure how I'm going to tell them. I will tell them eventually. Maybe I need to get through the first 12 weeks or whatever. And then I had to tell Kathy. And Kathy I said, is it okay if I put this over my nose as if the character doesn't want to inhale this? Because I don't think I should be inhaling this.
Understood.
So
Yeah, I think I remember the sequence actually, because there's a scene where you're walking through a corridor and then you mentioned like the smell. It really smells in here or something.
Yeah.
And then it gives you a license to cover your face. So it's probably, okay. I think I see the scene now. Yeah.
How soon was that before the end of that season? Because you would have then had to go, right? I mean, if you were pregnant, right?
I don't know. When was that episode, Chris? Look in your archives.
Right.
Give me a second. I'll find it for you. It's definitely towards the end of the season 4. Episode 18 came out on 12th of April 1996. So I don't know when you shot that, but it's about 4 episodes before the end of the season, roughly, depending on what the shooting was.
And then I just kept getting bigger. The network was complaining about Andre gaining weight. I was like, oh no. I got big everywhere.
I guess at some point we must have known then, huh? I guess we knew.
Yeah, I think so.
And then were you then gone for a year? Because then you had this So was that after because then you came back, you reappeared as during the Beau murder after having been to France, and you came back in the French couture and the whole, and then your hair was dark. You came back not as a blonde. You came back as a dark haired.
It was my opportunity to not be blonde for a while, because I'm not sure. I'm doing it now because it's because I'm older.
And I didn't know that, because when we did Real Men, you were blonde. So I'd never seen you as a brunette, which is funny because
I love your return when you come out the taxi. By the way, it's such a cool little moment.
That's a great little scene. Yeah, the first thing we see is your hand handing the taxi cab driver some money, one of which is a French franc. Yeah. So in very, very sort of shorthand, even before you speak or before we really see you, that you're coming from France, because you accidentally hand him a French franc. And then you step out and you got the couture and the dark glasses, and it's like, wow, whole different Megan steps out of the cab. It was interesting.
Yeah. I was a whole new character for that one. But it was so funny because I don't know whose idea it was that they wanted to go from, always on your feet first. And they did that in the very first episode that I did too. I think, was it Jean who wanted a shot of my foot? I was like, dude, you really don't. I'm a dancer. I can't, my feet are not pretty. If you're looking for a pretty feminine foot, it's not mine.
There's a Quentin Tarantino joke in this somewhere, but anyway.
So that was Chris. So when she stepped out of the cab, was it on your boots or something maybe when you got out of the cab and then up to your face?
Yeah, some shoes. And I was like, oh God, I just remember seeing it going, man, I'm going to have to learn how to really get out of a car. Like that.
Yeah,
that that is not an Oscar performance. That is not an award show getting out of the car kind of a moment.
Had you been to Baltimore before?
Never.
So that was brand new too.
It was
Baltimore
my first,
was brand new for you.
Everything was, I told you, Disneyland.
Right.
First time. And I loved it. And I loved the fact that I loved Fells Point. I loved the cobblestone. I wish you could be there, Chris. I wish you could have seen all of it. I mean, it's old, and it's not as old as Europe, but it's
pretty
America
original.
Old, and very original.
Yeah. I did do a Google Maps recently where I could virtually go around. It is a very cool area, but I definitely hoping to come.
And the Daily Grind, and that was actually the first stop, the Daily Grind, then you come in and
That's right.
Go to the makeup trailer. But so yeah, I loved it. I was in Federal Hill, I think, that first season.
That's a pretty area.
Yeah, it was but kind of also isolated, but in a row house, which is what I wanted to experience. It was a beautiful row house, but they're like on top of one another, so there's no side windows ever. So the only light that you have are in the front and the back, and I just found it quite interesting, and then moved to Owings Mills.
Oh, that's right near me. I live a couple miles. I'm in Randallstown, so so Owings Mills is about 4 miles outside the Beltway.
You're there now.
Yep, I'm in Randallstown, which is a hop, skip, and a jump from Owings Mills. Yeah, a mile or two.
But you're not from.
Yeah, originally from here, and then I lived in LA for 8 years.
Then
that's where I met you the first time, and then came back. So, did you live in the same neighborhood where Yaphet bought the house over at McDonough Crossing? Because Yaphet bought a house over there in Owings Mills. At some point. I don't know if it was just when he got married.
I think that was after I left.
After you.
Yeah. Yeah, because one thing led to another. I think they probably would have come up with a really great storyline if I would have come back pregnant.
Well, I was going to ask you, because we were kind of leading into it, and you said something off air that sparked something. I mean, you mentioned obviously leaving the show was one of the hardest decisions you had to make. And I was wondering if you wanted to talk a bit about that, because obviously there's this big gap between season 4 and then you coming back in season 5 and stuff.
Yeah, for the one episode.
Yeah.
I was all set to come back for the next season, and to figure out how we could sort of work around that until my pregnancy or come afterwards. Atticus, my son, was due in October 17th, and he decided to come out July 13th.
Oh,
wow. Ooh, that's early.
So it was a very difficult time, but I had a baby who was like the size of a minute. He was the size of a cordless phone.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow.
That his head did not even cover the palm of my hand.
Wow.
And he was sliced and diced from the get-go. There was I won't even go into it, but there was so much going on.
I'm sorry.
So it's okay. He's
all right now.
He's a giant.
He's okay
My
now,
nickname
right?
for him now is Man Truck. Okay,
Yes.
Man Truck.
Yes.
Part man, part truck. That's my son.
Right.
And so I had a baby in the hospital, and I was due to go back, and I could not leave Los Angeles because of so many things going on, and I wasn't about to leave him with someone else.
Gosh, no. Of course not.
I couldn't. And but I did not. There was so much happening and so much going on in my personal life with Daniel, and with the baby and Atticus being born and all of this stuff, that I had to call Tom. And he was really understanding, but I didn't have my head on straight. I would have said, could I please come back after, if all goes well, will you still have me back in another season or another time? Can I just take some time off? But what I said was, I'm so happy that you've asked me back to the dance, because I was set to come back. And I said, but I can't. I don't know when he's coming home from the hospital. It turned out he spent 3 months in the hospital and still came home 5 days before his due date. So I felt like I felt like I owe people sort of an explanation as to why I suddenly disappeared. It had nothing to do with that. I loved doing that show.
So then when you got the call for the movie, was that like, yay?
Yeah, I was like, wow, what? Really? Really? I thought Tom was mad at me.
Oh, that was they did a great job with that. I mean, a lot of reunion shows suck, and that was really so good.
That was something. They fit everybody in, every single person.
I love it. I think it was Tom that said, he said, I was determined to get everybody back, even every character that had already died. And they managed to work in the flashbacks and everything.
Yeah.
So everybody was in it. Yeah, really. I'm just bawling my eyes out at the end of that, because, of course, I mentioned this in the other episode that Yaphet had since actually died. And he died in the movie, but then he had actually died. Made it like 9,000 times more poignant. Yeah. And now, if I watch it now, since Andre died, I probably would cry for an hour
Belzer
because
I mean,
everyone, this and Ned and everything.
It's like, they need to bring this show back, because just please have a look at the skills of these people.
Just amazing. And the cast that you came in with, just amazing. I mean, you came in when Ned was still there, crazy good.
Crazy good. Yeah. It was all crazy good. I mean, everybody had their moments, but it was just like, it's a veritable melting pot here. It's just another day at the office.
Have you returned to Baltimore since filming at all?
I have not. I don't. Well, now that I know that Susan's there, I might. I might
here.
Come in.
I'll pick you up at the airport or the train station or wherever. So are you in LA now?
I am in LA.
You're in LA, okay.
I'm in LA. I never thought I'd be in LA. I always thought I'd be in New York, or I'm Chicago. I'm real. I'm like, what you see is what you get. This is it. This is it. Aside from the, dyed hair and the makeup, whatever. But
and the Irish accent.
Yeah, and the Irish accent. Oh.
I have a random Baltimore question for you, if I may.
Susan
might know this one. So some cast and crew have shared their favourite Baltimorean food and drinks, and we've had scrapple, crab cakes, and gizzards. Were there any local dishes that you enjoyed whilst you're in Baltimore?
Listen, Chris, I had gizzards in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
cool.
there you
okay,
go.
they're not just the Baltimore thing.
I didn't need to have gizzards in Baltimore.
Right.
We used to go to Brown's Fried Chicken.
You were right there.
We had chicken gizzards, one of the cheap eats that you could get.
Delicious.
So my takeaway, I lived for the blue crab cakes, the Maryland blue.
They were amazing.
And there was that one. What was that one restaurant? It had it was a blue crab. Oh, they would just serve you either crabs or crab cakes on a piece of paper.
Yep.
What was that restaurant?
In Fells Point, or out where you were? In Fells Point, you mean?
No, I didn't do a lot out where I was. There was like a mall, and
that's no longer there.
Yeah.
Well, every place in Baltimore serves, they bring out the big brown roll of paper and dump the crabs on it.
No, it was one, I think I just
right down in Fells
Point?
Jimmy's?
I believe so. Blue Point crab.
Oh,
house?
well,
Where's that?
there is a Blue Point crab
Mm.
house in Owings Mills, but I think it's just a carry out unless they have a
No.
restaurant somewhere.
Boy, I don't know. I see. I've lost. Not only do I need to refresh my memory and look at some of those episodes if I could ever find them, I need to refresh my memory about the yeah, that might have been out in Owings Mills, but yeah, there were a lot of places anywhere I could find a good blue crab cake.
But yeah, crab cakes, yum. They're good. They're the best.
Because they were like no other.
They're like no other.
In any other place you go, if you got a crab cake, it was all this shredded stuff. Here it was like these lumps of crab. I said, that's a crab cake? Oh. Disneyland moment number 3.
Yeah. I remember, I think the first or second time I was in San Francisco and I was on Fisherman's Wharf and I went to get something for lunch. And I'm looking at the menu. I'm like, I'm on the water, right? Well, I looked at the waitress. I'm like, where do you have crab cakes? And she said, what? Like, no, we have cod cakes. No, they had never heard of crab cakes. They had those weird stone crabs or whatever. I don't know. I think they made stew out of them or something. But yeah, that's when I realized they weren't everywhere, and they're not everywhere.
No, they're not everywhere. Just like lobsters with claws are not everywhere.
Lobster, I don't get lobster.
Lobster with
not a lobster.
I don't either. I'm not either. But I remember. I think what was it? Daniel tried to order lobster in Los Angeles or something, and there was he's like, "Where's the claw?"
Yeah. Well, some good
right.
meat in
The claw's got the best meat in it, right?
Yeah.
So funny. And the places you go, there are what do you call them? The kind of restaurants where they have them everywhere. Chain restaurants here that like they're crab. They say they're crab restaurants, and you go in and they don't have blue crabs. They have Alaskan, those gigantic spider things, whatever those are.
Yeah.
That's no.
Maryland blue crab.
So you can't beat a Baltimore crab. Yeah.
You can't beat. Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, that's my favorite. That was my favorite.
It's a good memory. So cool. So I guess that one of the other questions we ask everybody is, and maybe we talked about it in the whole idea of the way we shot it and the way it was written and all that. But why do you think it has retained interest 30 years later? It still has a very strong fan base, but why do you think it feels very relevant when you watch episodes now? It still feels very relevant.
It's very relevant because it's you watch the show from a human level, number one. But have you seen the news lately? It's still relevant, unfortunately, and relevant again because people are so angry everywhere. And it's not the anger, it's the result of the anger that I'm talking about. It's the violence that people don't know what to do with their frustration and because of the economy and all this other stuff. I mean, you could bring in all of it, but the show itself, in my opinion, is uniquely its own. There hasn't been anything like it before or since. I mean, NYPD Blue tried to do the shaking of the dolly track or something, but that was not, it was not the same. You did not have the same kind of writing. You did not have the same, it's not like any other cop show. And because the stories are about men, women, children, animals, events, life events, it is relatable. It's relatable to everybody. And it's relatable on a realistic level. Let's not, it's not polished and it's not social media savvy and it's not like, here's my makeup, where's your face? Kind of a thing. It is, with whom you're having the pleasure. Let me put it that way. And that's my favorite quote. Yeah. You always know with whom you're having the pleasure on that show.
Right.
And it's important for people to be able to look at it because you'll be able to relate to these people. No matter who you are, there's going to be someone there and there's going to be an instance where you can relate to it.
In doing research and preparing for this, I was thinking about the time period, not many women cops. And here was a show that had some very serious women police on it. And even at the time, probably not 2 women homicide detectives in Baltimore, but on the show there were. And then thinking, I don't know, maybe things have changed since then. But then I see these headlines today about the blowback to the Secret Service agents that were protecting Trump, so here we are still 30 years later, people criticizing women police officers. And I remember the time watching that, and I wasn't thinking, oh God, there's women there. I was thinking, oh cool, there's women there. And obviously it didn't occur to me that would strike other people as wrong. Like it was wrong that there were women Secret Service agents. So how much have, it's still relevant because those issues still exist, and not a little bit. They still exist in a large way.
They exist in a very large way. No one ever complained about watching the show and having women cops on there. Nobody ever did that. They accepted it. They accepted it. But yet everywhere else, it's just not. So yeah, relevancy. I think so. I think we have to address the same issues. So much has not changed, Susan, so much. Or it has come back. We thought we were making progress, but apparently we took a couple of steps forward and then 4.5 back. That's where I feel like we are. We're, technology has come a long way. Cameras are smaller, blah, 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 blah. That's about it. But we need it. We need the show back. It's just, let's have a little dose of reality, if you will, but let's have a dose of a mirror being put up in front of us, because that is the only way that we can get things to move forward, is to just see, just like we would walk into the row houses, or we would walk into places, or we would see things that and be amongst people that were struggling, more than we were, and had wonderful conversations and were welcomed in. We need to be able to see one another. Period. Just from a human standpoint.
And all those things were addressed straightforwardly. They were addressed
you didn't
honestly and straightforwardly in the show, I think.
All of your quirks and all your prejudices and all your whatevers. This was who this person was. So there's a moment for everyone to be able to look at and relate to. And I'm not just saying, oh, watch this so you can self-reflect. No, it's also just a damn good show. Did you talk about the fact that the original scripts were based on actual murders?
Oh, the best source material in the world, that book, David's book. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can listen to his episode. We just dropped it today, so you can listen to him talk about that.
Okay, yeah, can't wait.
Source material. Amazing.
Some of the later episodes as well, the writers were like looking for new stories that they could kind of work into it. Yeah.
Yeah. And Tom said that he said he thinks up until maybe, what did he say, Chris? Maybe season 5, they squeezed every story out of that book. They literally used every line, period, everything out of the book.
Yeah.
And then they had created the world so well that then I think David commented in this new episode that even when it was stories that were not from the book, that the world had been so well created that those stories rang true. Obviously, it's fiction, but rang true in the sense of the world that had been created, influenced by the real stories.
Some were surreal. Didn't we actually shoot in some of the places where the murders actually took place?
Oh, that's a good question. That would have been a good question for David. That I don't know. We certainly shot in real places. In places where they had to be cleaned out and that.
I have that recollection.
Wow.
That this was the place where this happened.
Wow.
We'll have to research that.
But then again, I can't. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I mean, we certainly brushed. I mean, I remember specifically, clearing out a drug corner and then shooting there that night, and the real dealer's not happy. That neighborhood.
Yeah.
That was the most tense night that we ever spent. So that was a real location. I don't know if it was a murder location, but it was a real working drug corner. And we were shooting there at a night when they wanted to be in business. They didn't want to be usurped by our presence.
Yeah, well, you couldn't pay them enough money, even if you were to pay for the location.
Yeah, because they'd be making
making a lot more than you.
than I was. That's for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
But anyway, okay.
But we're still here to live
Yes.
to tell the tale.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
Well, final things then, really. Is there anything that you have been working on since, or working on now, that you'd like to talk about at all on here?
I'm getting ready to shoot something with my. I am now a co-founder of Herkel Durkel Productions.
Oh, cool.
Herkel Durkel. I saw that online somewhere.
Yeah, Herkel Durkeling is a Scottish term, sort of like
Not an Irish term.
Just kind
Of your Irish ancestry.
Yeah.
You're so European.
Yeah.
And what's that? What? Yeah.
It's sort of like when you're kind of lying in bed and and you're just not really doing anything, and then some of your best ideas kind of come when you're lying in bed. So we developed part of a group that happened to come together during COVID of writers and directors and actors and things like that, and we now have a script, and we're going to be shooting.
Excellent.
Our first production in Columbus, because we have people from everywhere.
Oh,
So
wow.
We're going to be shooting our first production in Columbus, Ohio.
Wonderful.
Can you mention even a working title?
Yes, the working title is My Mother, the Madam.
Nice.
Ooh,
Nice.
there's a loaded title for you.
Yeah.
Wow, I love it. Oh, that's great.
Well, good luck with Herkel Durkel production. That sounds brilliant.
Yes,
and,
please keep in
Keep us
touch.
posted.
Oh,
Absolutely.
I will.
And lastly, was there anything you did want to say now about you being an autism advocate and things, or anything you wanted to talk about that? Or
Well, for those of you who don't know, my son Atticus is autistic. He's an autistic young adult. And for those parents who are, I guess, I don't know about struggling. Can I say the one thing that I wanted to say about
Absolutely.
that? I said, listen, I just want to address all the parents. I know it's a hard road, but here's the funny thing. As much as you don't necessarily ever think of yourself as wanting to join this club, as soon as I became a member of the club, well into becoming a member of the club, I realized this was a club that I'm really happy that I'm a member of. My son's support and the people that he is with, his friends, are so refreshingly honest. And I'm not talking about flat honest. They are amazing groups of people, and the parents are amazing groups of people. And together we offer the scaffolding. And there are so many organizations. I highly recommend that they go to any of the organizations. If you're in Los Angeles, contact the Ed Asner Family Center. Contact my son works out of this studio sometimes, Spectrum Laboratories, where all artists are on the spectrum.
Oh, nice.
So they do
great.
film and
Terrific.
I found, so when your children are old enough, up until that time, go through a self-determination process. If you have that, find the regional center, get diagnosed. There are a lot of organizations out there. Become a part of that group. There's so many ways to be able to navigate this whole situation with joy and alongside of your child, who, as we all know, it takes a lot to be able to get alongside of it. It's a puzzle. It's a puzzle. And those are a couple of the organizations in Los Angeles that I wanted to address. There's so many.
well, thank
Great.
you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Isabella. It's been wonderful chatting with you today, and thank you for joining us on the
Terrific.
podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So that was Isabella Hofmann. That was a really, really great interview. And thank you again, Isabella, for joining us on the show. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. I particularly enjoyed her descriptions of her improv background from Chicago. I've done a little bit of improv. It's not easy. I'm not a particularly great improviser, but it's certainly good training, I think, for an actor to be able to kind of just kind of go with the flow and respond to what's thrown at you rather than being too rigid and stuck to what you're expecting. So yeah, that was really interesting. Susan, I don't know if you had any kind of key thoughts you want us to chat about.
Yeah, and I found that really interesting too. I did not know she had that background, and which certainly, and the way she talked about it, in this episode, how that really worked for her with Homicide, because of the sort of having to think on your feet. I worked with a bunch of Second City people on a Tom Hanks movie called Nothing in Common, and all of his office mates in the advertising world he worked in were all Second City people, including Dan Castellaneta,
the voice of Homer Simpson. Yes.
Yeah. So I didn't know that she had also come from Second City. That was neat.
Yeah.
And what you mentioned in the intro, which she elaborated on, I really, really enjoyed her insights about the woman working in a man's world in both levels, as her character and on the set, because it was a very heavy, it was a bunch of guys, and so was the crew.
Yeah.
Even though I mentioned at the beginning, having this, and I'm pretty sure it was Melissa who looked at me at one point and was like, "Thanks for being there." Obviously there were other women on the show. Wardrobe, there were other women on the show, but once the camera starts rolling, I'm the only one. And then once the lighting and everything's set up and we're doing takes in between, unless somebody has to rush in to do a wardrobe fix, I was, the only woman in facing them. And so I don't want that to sound egotistical, but there was a connection there, I think. And it was interesting that she elaborated on how that was working through that, both as the character and on the set in real life. Because what a bunch of, that's a lot of big personalities on that show. And she has really held her own, having to deal with the male personalities, but then the layers of sexism and racism and all those other isms that she had to deal with, in addition to just trying to function in that world to begin with, whether you were a male or not, because they're all bumping up against each other, and there's a female, and she has all these other layers she has to deal with. So I really found that interesting how she talked about it, but also how beautifully written the character was.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I found her description of her approach to confrontations quite interesting, because there's that scene in those early 3 episodes. It might be the second episode of those 3 episodes where basically she confronts Gaffney for his poor decision making and his bad attitude, and basically demotes him to another unit. And Gaffney's all very loud and shouting, but she just lowers her voice. It's a bit like what Edward James Olmos did on Miami Vice, which I mentioned Miami Vice in our coffee room chats, but Edward James Olmos used to purposely lower his voice and look away from people. And it brings an intensity to the character, and so you do end up having to pay attention to them. It's quite interesting. So it's a bit like, it's almost the opposite to what Yaphet Kotto would do, where he would have to walk off somewhere to encourage the camera to follow him. It's sort of the opposite way of doing it with sound. It's quite interesting. So yeah.
Yeah, and I watch a lot of movies and a lot of television, obviously. And something I was watching recently, and I was thinking what that scene would have looked like if the person, instead of exploding, had pulled it down like she did. It pulled it down into that intense sort of, now you're listening to me. You just pick where you want to go because you're going. She said something like that to him.
Yeah, that's pretty much what she said. Yeah.
And I think the next time we see him is in Fire Part 1. He's in the missing persons division. He's down there in missing persons, and he's trying to hold his own with Pemberton and Bayless, who are saying, we need some information. He's like, come back in 24 hours. They're just trying to be the hard ass and trying to assert his authority in the missing persons division, which was interesting. But yeah, she did an amazing job with that, and also all the layers she had to do, not just as a detective, also the layers she had to do as a police officer, detective, lieutenant, captain, but also as a woman, having to show the soft side with the relationship with Beau, and also the sort of tragic soft side when he gets killed. Sorry, spoiler alert for people who haven't watched it yet. And then also going home to the daughter and having to be a mother. And it's hard enough. I'm not a mother, but it's hard enough for women to be mothers and have careers. But I cannot imagine being a homicide detective and being a mother and having that world in your head.
Yeah.
And having to go home and be present, with a daughter and what's important in her world when you're coming from this world of death. So it just, I really loved her talking about all those different layers and how I think as an actor, and I'm not an actor, so I can't say this from my point of view, but as an actor, how those kinds of different levels and challenges make it much more interesting and fun as an actor when you have that kind of depth, which I think, is true of the show as a whole, with almost all the characters, all the main characters get that kind of depth, which also makes it worthwhile watching.
Indeed, yeah. The other interesting thing, and it's come out with other actors too, is Isabella's respect for Jean, the director of photography, and she described him both as a yoga master and Yoda.
Right, exactly. We call him the Yoda master, right?
Yes, the Yoda master. Yeah, that should be a show in itself. But I really, and how he worked with the camera and the freedom it gave her to then concentrate on, and the other actors to concentrate on their performances, the whole sort of visual approach to Homicide, which is sort of very unique to this show, and as she says, hasn't really, no one's ever really managed to capture anything similar. People captured like Handheld and other things, but nobody's ever done it quite the way Homicide did it, and Homicide sort of turned it into an art in itself. So yeah,
and I think a lot of that is like when you work in traditional filmmaking, the camera man or woman, cinematographer, can disappear. If they're set shots or very orchestrated dolly shots where it's very separate from the action. So I'm capturing the action, but I'm not in the action. And in Homicide, not only was the camera in the action, the original concept, which, we really do have to get some first season people on, including hopefully Wayne Ewing, to talk about the original concept, not just of the camera moving with the characters, but being a character, being in the scene as another presence in the scene. So then what happens is then the actors have to interact with that camera as another character almost. And even it was interesting in, was it The Gas Man? One of the last couple ones I've watched, there's a scene in the box where Pemberton and I think also Bolander are speaking directly to the camera. So at that point, the camera is the point of view of the person they're interviewing. But they go in and out of it. And then, he'd pull back and it would be sort of the regular interaction and go back in directly across from Andre and have Andre speaking not around the camera or eye lines, matching whatever the character's eye line was, but directly at the character. So he's looking through the lens at you. And in that case, the camera was the other person. So that kind of interaction, I think she it was really interesting the way she spoke about having to interact with the character and how interesting that was and how that has not been duplicated.
Yeah.
Because I think we cross so many lines that people still don't want to cross in some levels, but it worked. Somehow it worked the way it was done. And I also liked how she talked about the style. We go on and on talking about Jean's smooth camera work, and people tend to say, oh, the first season was too shaky, blah, blah, blah. well, first of all, two different people, but also Wayne was originally approached because of his style and because Barry wanted that sort of the cinema verite,
French New Wave kind of thing.
Jules and Jim, French New Wave look, which was absolutely, if you watch Jules and Jim, it's like the camera's running down the street with them and it's bouncing all over the place. So there was a specific directive for them on the first season to make it look like that and to not have a lot of lighting and to move really quickly. So we shouldn't talk about the first season as if it not being as good as the second season.
The first season looks fantastic.
It's just different. And it also was different because that was the way he was asked to shoot the show.
Yeah.
So I just want to make that clear.
Well, and he came up, he did a demo. So I've been on Wayne's website. If you go on Wayne's website, there's a really interesting demo.
I need to go watch that. Yeah.
There's a really interesting demo from the set of Toys, I believe it is, where you've got Clark Johnson and Daniel Baldwin and doing a scene. And it's supposed to be in a car park, and they're literally just walking around the car, chatting to each other, and come to a stop. And it was a demonstration of how this look is used with the editing, and it's really interesting. And yeah, as you're saying, it's inspired by the French New Wave because Wayne talks about that. I think the cinematographer who kind of developed that original style was a man named Raoul Coutillard, who's a French cinematographer, and I think they used Arton cameras as well, which are French cameras, which you guys use on Homicide. The French cameras, the Arton's a beautiful camera. So no, it was a really interesting sort of art to it. And I think the first season looked great. Actually, the first season, when rewatching it on Peacock, looked better than I remembered it. And in fact, the only episode that on the rewatch I've done so far looked a bit slightly funky was the pilot episode, because I still think they were pulling it from, they weren't managing to pull it from its original source somehow. It looks still a bit...
There's definitely grain. You could see grain in the first episode, which you don't see. There's no grain anywhere.
No, I know it sort of disappeared after that for good
It's
and bad.
all beautiful after that.
Yeah.
But
it looked like a movie. I was like, this is, I don't know, not in a bad way. I was just thinking, God, this actually reminds me of watching, independent cinema in the 90s shot on film. It had that look in a good way, and it was quite refreshing. And I think, Wayne pioneered this thing, and Jean was hired because of the film Laws of Gravity that just took it one step further. And I think the only brief was to do, I don't know, it's still very jump cutty, but it's jump cutty in a slightly different way. It's, how do I describe that? It's just, it is a little bit different, but it's exactly the same sort of principle as well. And Jean just took it one step further. And I remember Jean, when we interviewed him, talked about some of the early episodes, he did a lot more scenes where it's just all in one shot, which obviously he got told off about, and they had to film it a few different ways so then they could edit it and cut down, because the main complaint for Homicide from an editing point of view was that they needed to be able to cut down dialogue for running time. So that's why they had to, be able to edit the footage. Whilst if you do it on a oneer, you can't really, unless you use jump cuts, you can't cut lines out. And then jump cuts can be ugly or attractive depending on how much time and space is shifted. So if the camera, if you shift a little bit, a jump cut's not too bad. But if you shift you cut out 2 minutes of dialogue and now people the other side of the room, that can be quite jarring. So it's sort of like, I feel the jump cuts punctuate a point in the show. Like they repeat.
They're usually there's a dramatic point. Not all the time though.
Yeah, and they're repeating a line.
Because obviously a lot of times when they're driving in the car, and they're having one of their philosophical discussions, and it's like jump all the way down the street. But it's not disturbing because they're both still in the same place. They're both still in the front seat.
Yes. And it creates an energy. It gives it action, because this is the other thing with cinema. And it's why I like Barry Levinson's stuff, actually, because for Barry Levinson as a director, a lot of it's about the art of the conversation, and a lot of cinema you're taught show not tell. And he and Richard Linklater are quite interesting directors because their films are very dialogue heavy, when traditionally you're told not to be too dialogue heavy. And there's always this conflict of having films or TV shows that are too quote unquote talky, especially in today's environment. So the only way to kind of counterbalance that is with really stunning visuals or real energetic editing. And so Homicide's got energetic editing with really exciting visuals. Then a show like Better Call Saul, which is a spin-off from Breaking Bad, had much more static but composed shots that were almost photographic, and like a painting. So you watch it for a period of time. And so it's very interesting, sort of these different styles that help shows that are quite talky. So and I'm quite talky too.
Yeah, and maybe I think you and I have talked about it off air. Maybe we can find somebody who was involved in the process and talk about what they did in the transfer and in the new in the reboot. I think that would be cool to get into somebody, to get into that. And then also, maybe talk to a couple editors.
Yeah, it would be fascinating.
Which I think would also be really cool to get into the editing room. And what did they want to see? And did they, like you said, do they want more pieces, or do they want more that, they don't want oneers, they want more pieces. So, and how that worked out with the styles and the way things come together on the set, and then what you want when it gets to the editing room. I think all that would be really fascinating. Back to Isabella, I wanted to mention one of the other things that was really interesting is when she moved up to captain, and she obviously jumps over G, becomes his boss. And that really sparks up in was it the end of season 3, beginning of season 4? In any case, their first confrontation, where they're trying to still remain, amiable with each other, and her having to juggle this, like here I am again, once again, she's a woman, now she's in a position of power over somebody that's really powerful. I mean, you can't argue with the fact that Yaphet's portrayal of Giardello was he is just like power unleashed, sometimes he's just, and then having to juggle that with her friendship with him and her respect for him and all that. So I thought that was great. And then I did want to talk about, she mentioned how Jean managed to go down there, our main staircase with the actors. And in Fire Part 1 is the scene where she's arguing with Barnfather about being understaffed. And they're coming down the steps, but the camera's in front of them. So the camera's coming down the steps backwards. And I know I have, obviously we had the sedan chair, which was the 2 speed rails with the chair on it. But I also remember either Joe or the dolly grip, Rodney French, who, when you don't have a dolly on the show, what does the dolly grip do? The dolly grip grabs the back of the cameraman's pants at the waist. And if you're going up the stairs, you're helping him navigate walking backward. And which Jean did, I have no idea how he did this, walking backwards up the stairs. But this scene with Barnfather and Russert is coming down the stairs with the camera in front. And if you watch it, there's a couple different camera setups. Some of it is, I think some of it's with the sedan chair. So then the grips have the speed rail and him sitting on the chair, walking backwards down the steps. I don't know. And I don't remember if part of that also was Jean without the sedan chair, Jean just walking backwards and being guided as he went down. And then there's also a setup at the bottom of the stairs where it's just Jean sort of static, not static, but obviously not on a moving platform. But she talked about that and the wonder of watching him being able to do those things. But if that scene is really interesting to watch, because I was there and I can't even remember how they did it. So I might have to go back and call Josh and Joe. Or maybe we can get Rodney he's a real character, get Rodney on the show and ask him how he dealt with in situations where Jean needed to be guided, where he was blind, walking backwards down the steps, how they worked that out.
Yeah, massive health and safety hazard. That it's not easy. Yeah, and they do it very well. Are there any photographs of this sedan chair anywhere? Because I'd love to see one if there is.
That's a good question. Yeah. In reconnecting with people, I'm seeing a lot of photos I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
But my guess is yes, because that was such a unique element. I would guess that somebody popped off some shots of that. So I could ask Josh and Joe If they have any, that would be would be fun to have. And skipping outside the technical realm, I also loved, she started talking about her, we talked about her wardrobe and how they had to sort of balance. She's got to be professional.
Yeah.
She can't look schlubby. But also the contrast between her and Melissa's character, between her and Kay Howard, who was very all business, no makeup, in the suits. And I think that helped underline the tension between the two of them as well, because they presented so differently, although they were both very obviously very capable and very authoritative, and had to hold their own in that job. So I love that she brought in and talked about the wardrobe, and also not just talked about it, but she also talked about how beautiful the clothes were. And we've never mentioned that with the men actors we've interviewed. But the wardrobe became very unique to each character. That they were defined in part. So kudos to the wardrobe department also for their work, which sometimes becomes invisible. They did a great job too. I love that she mentioned crab cakes. That's usually a top of the list for people in Baltimore.
I think Reed liked the crab cakes too. Yeah.
But it was nice that she mentioned that instead of some of the other things we've heard. And I think in Fire Part 1, I believe is where they find I think this is my memory, is the liquor / convenience store where they find the gasoline can in Fire Part 1, where Pembleton finds a gasoline can in the dumpster. I think that's my memory of Gizzards.
Hey.
My memory of the Gizzards, I think, was that store, but I may be wrong.
Brilliant. I'll have to try to recreate that.
Yeah.
Cool.
But anyway.
Excellent. I think it was a really interesting interview, and thank you again to Isabella for joining us, and really enjoyed her recollections of being on the show and talk about the experiences. And it was just an honor to speak to her. I think her character is such a powerful and interesting character. And actually, my only regret now is I remember there's one aspect of her character from Naval Intelligence, and I completely forgot to ask Isabella about this sort of backstory, because her character had quite a elaborate backstory, and I forgot to kind of ask her a bit about that. So maybe I'll get a chance again in the near future to chat with her about that. But yeah.
Yeah, and I also appreciated her. We talked ahead of time about whether she wanted to mention her autism advocacy, and I really appreciated.
Yeah.
I have some friends who have children with autism, and know how difficult it was for them to try to get the right resources. It's just like constant trying to get the correct resources, and I love that she was happy to talk about that, and talked about people don't wish to be a part of that club, but she said she's so happy that she's in the club now, because Atticus is such a great well, I can't say kid now because he's all grown up. It was lovely for her to offer that for us and to speak to people about that too. Yeah, terrific interview.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you, Susan, for your time on this. And
sure,
don't forget you can follow us on social media. We're just at Homicide Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. And thank you, everybody, for listening, and join us on the next episode.